slide printout because you can't read it as well. So this is just bullet points that are coming up on the slides, so you didn't get the pretty pictures, I'm sorry. But you do still get all the information. My name is Laura Valentine. I graduated in 2011. I graduated from elementary. I had an elementary ed degree, but I actually teach 8th grade language arts. In my district, language arts is split. So reading and writing are two separate subjects. I teach the writing part. I did not think I'd be teaching writing when I graduated, Augie, but that's what happened, and I absolutely love my job. My middle school is small, and I'm the only 8th grade writing teacher in the building, so I see every single student. 75% of my students are free and reduced lunch, 40% are minority, and then 50% are white. My majority of our minority students are African American, but it's almost a 50-50 split. My classroom is incredibly diverse when you look at it. And when I was at Augie, I was lucky to have the summer research fellowship experience where I worked over at Longfellow, and I looked at math development with kindergartners, and that's where my interest in differentiation began. Now with my current position, I absolutely need to differentiate to meet all of my students' needs, because I have students whose parents have never read a book to them and are at a 2nd grade reading level, and then I have students in a gifted program who have been in the gifted program since 3rd grade. So I have an incredibly wide range of students in my classroom, and I have to differentiate. So in order to help me with that, I'm actually getting my master's in differentiation. Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about what differentiation is. We're also going to talk about a specific strategy that can help you use grouping to meet the needs of all of your students. So differentiation, in its basic terms, is adjusting and modifying what skills and concepts students learn, what materials they use, and how their learning is assessed based on the needs of the student. Okay, you can differentiate on product, process, or just overall skill, or so you can modify what they need to know, how they get there, and then what they do. So those are the 3 basic ways to differentiate. All right, so you can differentiate in 3 major ways. Go ahead. Okay. Readiness, which is their academic level. Student interest, so if they like animals, do a lesson about animals. And then the 3rd way is student learning style. I'm going to tell you, the readiness one is the hardest way to differentiate because it requires you to look at a lot of data and understand data. I'm not the best at differentiating the student readiness level, but I do use a lot of student interest and student learning type in my classroom. Okay, so readiness level, what is it? You're going to modify the facts and skills that students are expected to learn. Sorry. Content for all students should be concept-based, relevant, and transferable. So what you're going to do is you're going to know what the kids need to know by the time they leave your classroom. But you want them to be able to transfer that skills into real-life situations, regardless of what their ability level is. Because if you are not teaching students how to transfer those skills, you are doing a disservice. Bottom line. All right, interest learning style. Who here can think of learning styles? Anybody know a type of learning style? Kinesthetic. Kinesthetic. I would almost brought candy and you would have gotten a candy. All right, what's another one? There are 3 big ones, guys. Kinesthetic, touch, what?
Visual.
Visual, and then the other one?
Auditory.
Auditory, excellent. So, when you have those 3, you want to ask, does the topic or concept allow for students to focus on one part of their choosing and still get the big idea? So, last year I had a lot of students who were musical of the multiple intelligences and auditory learners. So I took my grammar unit, because kids hate grammar, let me just tell you. I took it and I said, you're going to learn a grammar concept, and then you're going to teach it to the class by rewriting the song lyrics of a popular song. So I had kids, bringing Sexy Back by Justin Timberlake. We did Bringing Commas Back. And they were like, we're bringing commas back? Yeah, you other students don't know how to act. Nope. It was great. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. So that's based on student interest, because they had music, and learning type, because they were hearing that song and able to understand the rules of comma usage. So can the material be adapted to suit a variety of modalities? That's what I'm talking about. Can you get this information to be for visual learners, kinesthetic, auditory, anything that you can think of? Can you get it and change it into different ways? Go ahead. These are some of the ways you can differentiate, okay? Grouping, jigsaw, literature circles, level text, varied questions. So you're going to ask different levels of Bloom's taxonomy all about the same point. Graphic organizers, easy way to differentiate. Normally there's a lot of resources on it. Make a little star by that because you can get graphic organizers real easy. And you can help low-level learners. They do wonderful, especially ELLs. Graphic organizers for ELLs are like the best thing in the entire world. It helps them so much. And then tiered instruction, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. Tiered instruction. Go ahead. A tiered lesson, you can just go, I think it has more than one, yeah. A tiered lesson has the same learning objectives for all students, yet it becomes differentiated by what you're having them do. So every day in my class, I have an I can statement. Students say, I will. So by the end of class, students know what they're going to be able to do. I can use commas appropriately in a sentence. But I'll have groups do different things in different ways to get to that level. So you can tier instruction on readiness, interest, or student learning style. And then you do need to do work before you tier. I'm going to tell you that right now. It is one of the more preparation-heavy ways to differentiate, but the payoff, I think, is really great. And once they're doing the activity, it's a great way for you to be able to get around and formatively assess your kids as they're working. So you have to pre-assess, especially if you're doing readiness levels. Think about it. If you don't pre-assess a student, you're not going to know where they are. If you don't pre-assess a student, you can't know what type of learner they are. You can't know what they are interested in. And you can't tier the instruction based on interest, learning style, or stuff like that. Okay. There are 5 major points to tiering instruction. You can go and I'll just get all 5 up there. Yeah. Okay, so you're going to choose a concept from the standards that you want to teach. So you're going to look through the Common Core standards or your lesson objectives for the day. In my school, we don't have a curriculum because of the Common Core yet, and we're working on developing it. So my curriculum is the Common Core standards. So I just pick a standard that I know I need to have kids learn, break it down into different lessons, and that's how I get the things that I tier. You're going to have to assess your students. You're going to then create an activity that's focused on the project. Then you're going to adjust the activity for those different learners and those different learning types and the readiness levels. And then you're going to have the students go to the right group. So it's basically looking at assessment data or your assessment, creating an activity in multiple parts, multiple ways to have the students complete that activity, then matching the students to the appropriate group. Okay. So this is a readiness example. All right, this is for math. I don't teach math, so this is not one of my lessons. It's for 2nd grade math, so thankfully I understand the concept. So this is for people, students having to represent fractions in different forms. So tier 1, and so it's by readiness. Using circles and squares and pairs, students determine how to share the food equally by folding the paper. 2 pairs determine how they can equally share with 4 people. They cut parts and stack them to see if they match. Repeat by having groups share a Reese's cup equally with 3 people. That's probably a low level because you're having students work in pairs, they're stacking, they have all these things. They're only doing fourths and thirds. It's not a huge, I mean, it's a huge idea because fractions aren't very important, but it's not an overwhelming amount. So they're probably students who are struggling with math. The tier 2, most of the time, is your on target or a little below target learners. Using paper circles, pizza, squares, sandwiches, in triads, so now they're in groups of 3, have students determine how to share food equally and illustrate by folding the paper. Okay, so they're doing sixths now, and thirds, and twelfths, and all these things. So they're doing higher level fractions, right? So you can see that the learning between this one and this one is slightly at a different level. It's still the same concept because you're talking about fractions and representing them, you know, manipulating with fractions and what they would look like. But you have a larger amount of fractions happening. And then tier 3, they're going to use paper rectangles and triangles. So they're using a different manipulative now. They're still learning how to represent fractions by pictures, but they're doing stuff with triangles and how many ways can you do this with a fraction and all these sorts of things. So you're really encouraging those higher level thoughts in your group 3, which would ultimately be your higher level students. Now you have to remember, readiness doesn't necessarily mean academic success. So the students who are in tier 1 for this, maybe they just don't know fractions, but in your vocabulary groups, they might be way above where they need to be. So you can't automatically say, well, they were in tier 1 for this, so they're lower level for everything. That is not what it is saying. It is saying these are students who are not ready to hit that higher level learning yet. Readiness is not academic success. You want to group the students appropriately so they can be academically successful. But in no way are you saying that my special ed kids are all in tier 1. Because I have special ed kids in my class who only have an IEP for math. So they're really good at writing. I mean, relatively. They're good at writing, but they're in a special ed math class. So I'm not putting them in tier 1 because that's not their readiness level. You cannot use IEPs, ELLs as fallbacks to group kids in tier 1. That is not helping your student. Okay. Interest level. I did this one, so I actually understand what's happening. I do a debate unit because I have to teach argumentative writing. It's a huge part of the Common Core. Anybody who wants to teach English, make sure you talk about, how to have students do argumentative writing, not persuasive writing, because they changed the words in the Common Core. So it's argumentative now, not persuasive. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Because why not, Illinois? Why not? Students will work with other members. So this is, ability doesn't matter anymore. I've now taken kids who love animals, and they're going to learn about animal testing, or talk about zoo problems, or things like that. So they're in that group. So you can talk about, like, is the circus a good thing or a bad thing? Is animal testing a good thing or a bad thing? So those kids who love animals or care about animals, go in the animal group, because they're going to learn about something they're interested in, and they'll do more work for you. Tier 2 environment, global warming, alternative energy, all things like that. Kids who care about, picking up trash on the side of the road. I don't know. But they'll all do that. And then my third group was science. So I had stem cell research, things like that, to make sure that students had something they cared about to learn about. Because if they don't care, it's not there. And by putting their interests in there, that is giving them an automatic way to transfer the skill. I care about animals. I need to debate on how to keep animals safe out of animal testing. Okay, now I'm learning how to support my opinion about something I care about. That is a real life skill. Think about it. How many of you have ever been in an argument with a boyfriend, girlfriend, or your parents? You want to win those arguments so bad sometimes. So a real life skill, if you're interested and you're passionate, you learn how to support your thoughts. That's what doing interest-based hearing is. It's allowing kids to care about something so they learn how to transfer those skills into outside of the classroom. Go ahead. Okay, learning profile. Break it down into the 3 basic ones: auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. This is the parts of speech lesson I did. So for your visual learners, you can give them different highlighters and say, here's a passage, go through and highlight all the verbs in yellow. Go through and highlight all the adjectives in blue. And just give them different colors because it's visual. They are seeing that color, knowing, okay, verbs, maybe if you can even think of like a and I don't know, I can't think of any color that starts with an A, but like adjectives, if you can make it some color that starts with an A or help them even make that connection further, you could have them highlight. And then they know, oh, all my adjectives in this paragraph are yellow. And it's going to help them remember because they're visual learners, and seeing that on that paper will help them. Now auditory, you can have them give them different noises. Sounds real weird when you're doing the activity, and if an administrator walks in, they might think you're insane, but it's okay because you can explain it later. Because like I had kids, they decided that every time a verb came up, they were going to moo. So kids would read the passage, and when there was a verb, a kid in the group would be mooing. It was really weird, but it really helped them because they're auditory. They know now they're associating a verb with the moo sound. So like she ran, and another student in the group would go moo, and it was they're in 8th grade and they love it. Oh my God, they eat that up. And then tier 3 is kinesthetic. So touching. So they were moving the parts of speech to make them into sentences or grouping them. So they would be able to touch and see. So that's what you can do for those different learning types. Okay. I want you guys to get with a partner right now and design a tiered instruction lesson. You can do it about vocabulary. It's the easiest one to try and do. So think about any vocabulary. What would you do to meet the needs of either based on interest you could do it, or you can do it on learning profile because I'm not going to give you data and totally overwhelm you today. So with a partner, so find someone that's by you. Talk about just activities you think you could do for tiered instruction. I'm happy to help you if you need help. How are we doing your big group in the back? We got questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Who wants to try and share their lesson? You don't get to because I helped you. Okay. Anybody want to share? And it is okay if you didn't know what you were doing. Because you never know what you teach. I'm not going to lie. Go ahead.
Well, we kind of just kind of did a specific vocabulary.
Okay.
So we were being elementary and education majors. We were like, let's do a winter vocabulary unit. And so for like our tier 3, our visual learners, they would draw pictures to go along with the vocabulary words. Tier 2 would come up with sounds that reinforce it. So like a snowstorm, they could go like woo, stuff like that. And then tier 3, they could come up with an action. So like a snowball fight, they could do the action of making a snowball or snow or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a great example of how to differentiate for learning styles. Especially with the kinesthetic learners, they love to move. You'll notice your kinesthetic learners because they are the kids who are, I'm not saying they have ADD, but they look like they have ADD because they want to move when they're trying to learn. They'll be adjusting things, they'll be the tappers, they'll be the doodlers, they are those kids. 98% of my class right now is tactile learners. And it's interesting because the only way they learn is by moving. That they don't retain anything unless I have them move for it. Who else? That's a great lesson. That would work perfectly. What else? And how would you pre-assess for something like that? Because you have to pre-assess when you tier. So how would you pre-assess? Anybody?
Could you apply it to a book?
You could apply it to a book, or you can have them take a learning style inventory. Even they make them even for like little babies in elementary. It's like, I learn best when I color. And that tells you, okay, they learn best when they color, they're probably a kinesthetic or a visual learner. And they have very simple ones for students. And so first day of school or at the very beginning of the school year, give them a test on how they learn. You're going to learn their learning style, and your instruction can change based on that. The whole first week of school should be nothing more than learning about your students and then learning about your classroom. That's it. I don't teach the first week. I don't. I actually probably don't teach the first 2 weeks of school because I spend all that time knowing my kids and doing procedures with them so they don't act like a fool. What else? What other lessons did you guys come up with? Yes?
Speech unit, high school language arts speech unit of interpersonal communication.
Okay.
So since I do that, I'm going to let these guys are some of my students or former students.
Okay.
And they all want to be teachers.
Okay.
So, and they were in a presentation earlier, but we decided to bring them along to see some of the other things. So I'll let them take it away. But interpersonal communication speech unit, go.
So we said auditory, you can, so if you're talking about aggressive tone or if you're talking about, what was the other one we said? Assertive or non-assertive tone, you can bring in a book and bring it in the two tones. So
Okay,
people can
excellent.
hear what the two tones sound like when giving a speech.
Okay.
Okay.
Visual, you could like write it on the board.
For the kinesthetic learning, you can have them act out skits.
Yep.
Or different.
Skits? Kids love skits. Any kind of kid loves skits, but yeah.
Love skits.
I love skits.
Love skits.
I like watching the skits. It's all fun. Anybody else want to share? Those are really good. Nice job. Anybody else? Bueller. Go ahead.
Okay, so we were also doing vocab, but it's just kind of like a broad range, whether or not you want to do it in elementary or secondary.
Yep.
So for auditory, we said we would just say the word and then have them repeat it by applying it to maybe like another sentence.
Okay.
Like, saying like, I ran to get the groceries, or I ran to the supermarket, or whatever. For visual, we just like mix up the words and have them like match different ones.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, like take pieces of paper, write like different, like the meaning of the word, and then have them put it together.
Okay.
And then, or maybe even like draw the vocab. For kinesthetic, we just like come up with an action that like reinforce. They come up with a. I can't speak. I am sorry.
I can speak half the time anyway.
Yeah.
You're lucky. It's a good day today. Go ahead.
They'd come up with like an action that like reinforces a word that they hear. Maybe like, so if it's like a verb and we say like I ran, then they'd run.
Yeah. Good. That works. Okay. Does anybody else want to share? Okay. The reason that I thought it was important for you guys to know this is because I've sat on interview committees before. I was part of the hiring process for 2 of our new teachers this year on the 8th grade team, because there's only 5 teachers on the 8th grade team that get to be part of all those interviews. Every single candidate comes in and says, oh, I differentiate. The candidate we hired for science showed us examples of differentiation. It's a buzzword, and it is important to know what it is, but it's even more important to show that you understand how to use it, especially with education changing the way it is. You can't just go in and say, I meet the needs of all learners in my classroom. Great. As a teacher, that's what you should be doing. I'm sorry, I'm very honest. Fantastic. I applaud you for meeting the needs of all students in the classroom, but if you don't tell us how, if you can't give an example how, it's not going to help you as much as if you can give an example how. So even if you're thinking of something on the fly, like you just did, if you can give an example that you have an in-depth understanding of differentiation, that is going to help you in a job interview, because it is the buzzword in education, one of the many. And this year alone, last year, there was a student who was in self-contained special education. Now he's in my classroom, mainstream, because I'm not special ed. He's in my classroom now. And he's in 4 other regular ed classes. In the course of a year, he's been mainstreamed into 4 classes. 4 out of his 5 core classes. Starting after winter break, I'm getting a kid who's in our BD-ED program. He's been mainstreamed for 3 classes. He's getting put in 3 more classes. They're going to keep coming, and they will keep coming, because the goal of the special education program and the BD program in my school is to make sure students are in the least restrictive environment. So once they've done their job, the least restrictive environment is your classroom. And if you are not meeting those kids' needs, they are horrible to you. It's horrible to have them. They're not a joy to teach, I will tell you. If you don't meet students' needs, it's just like the alternative people, the alternative school that we just talked about. The kids who normally act up are the ones whose needs aren't being met. And some districts, like mine, we don't have an alternative option, because our alternative option is a trailer, and they focus on social emotional learning, and it's not doing anything for our students at this current time. So you're the alternative teacher in some cases, because it's just the way education is. So you need to know that you're going to get this. It's going to happen when you're a teacher, bottom line. I'm not trying to scare you, I'm just telling you how it is. So if you want to go to the next slide. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? I can answer anything about interview process, differentiation, life, I don't know. Deep, meaningful thoughts. Anyone? No one has any questions? We're not CCRing? Not reflecting? Dr. Rackney, what happened to the reflecting?
I don't know.
So you all feel like you could walk into an interview and explain how you would differentiate for a student? Because that's what you need to be able to feel like. Not like 100% confidently, because I didn't know what I was saying in my first interview. You all feel okay? Yeah.
What do you think was the winning factor about your interview that scored you the job?
I've interviewed twice, and I've been lucky. My first interview, I only got 1 interview out of Augustana. 1. And I got hired. Oh my God. I had 1 interview, my first interview. At the end of the first interview, they invited me back for the second. The second interview, at the end of it, they offered me the job. And it's a very rare occurrence. It does not normally happen that way. I know that the reason I was selected for the interview was because of the research paper I had written for Augustana. I think that Augustana grads are highly regarded, and that also helps. So I know that my education, as well as my extracurriculars, helped me get my foot in that door. And then really I just dazzled them with my personality. But it's all of, it depends on where you're interviewing. I did a lot of research before I went to that interview. I knew it was a team approach. So I talked about how I could do IDUs, so interdisciplinary units, with other teachers. I talked about, my familiarity with giving student choice, because that's going to be a huge thing that's going to come up, is making sure, that, you would make the best fit for the classroom. Talking about differentiation, talking about how I've learned to incorporate other subjects in my classroom. And then with the second interview I had for the school that I'm at now, it was the fact that I could plan creative, real-life, applicable lessons. Because there is no curriculum at my school, like I said. So when I came in and I said, I don't teach the same thing every year. I learn about my students and I do what's best for them. I'm familiar with the Common Core. Love your Common Core. And then I design lessons to make sure students can transfer these skills outside of the classroom. That was, I think, one of the bigger selling points, especially with this current population at my school. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right.
Yes.
So here are 2 websites, and a book. 2 websites that have everything you would ever want to know about differentiation on them. They're on your sheet, so you don't have to write them down. The book, it's a book of lists. It literally just lists things. And then there's my personal email, because my school email, you'll get bounced to spam if you have any questions. So if you ever want to contact me with any questions about differentiation, like I said, it is my master's, so hopefully I will become even more knowledgeable. I only have 5 classes left, so I'm almost done. Yeah, but if you guys have no other questions, I can let you go. Sorry I kept you a little bit longer than I was supposed to, I think. All right. Thank you so much for coming. There were so many of you.